A few days later, Edward was late with the passengers for James's train. "It's old iron again," grumbled James. "Edward always keeps us waiting." Edward heard James as he pulled into the station, but he just smiled. Later that week, James's driver didn't feel well. His fireman was phoning for a relief driver when he heard the signalman shout. James was puffing away without a driver. His fireman ran after him, but James was going too fast. The signalman had to halt the other trains to make sure there wasn't an accident. "Two boys were standing on James's footplate," explained the signalman when James's fireman returned. "Edward is bringing the inspector. He needs a pole and a coil of wire rope." James's fireman was waiting with the pole and rope when Edward arrived. "Good man," said the inspector. "Don't worry, we'll catch him," puffed Edward. By now, James was very frightened. He had realized that he didn't have a driver. "I can't stop," he wailed. "Help! Help!" "We're coming!" cried Edward, and he puffed with every ounce of steam he had until he was level with James's buffer beam. The inspector carefully climbed out of Edward's cab and stood on his front. He had made a noose out of the rope and tied it to the end of the pole. He was trying to slip it over James's buffer. The engine swayed and lurched, and the inspector nearly fell, but he saved himself just in time. At last he did it. "Got him!" he shouted, and pulled the noose tight around James's buffer. Then he carefully climbed back into Edward's cab. Edward's driver braked gently, so he didn't snap the rope, and James's fireman scrambled across and took control of James. Edward and James puffed back side by side. "So, old iron caught you after all," chuckled Edward. "I'm sorry," whispered James. "Thank you for saving me. You were splendid." When they reached the station, the fat controller was waiting. "That was a fine piece of work," he said. "I'm proud of you, Edward. You shall go to the works and have your worn parts mended." "Oh, thank you, sir," said Edward happily. "It will be lovely not to clank anymore." James's driver soon got better and went back to work. When Edward came home, he felt like a new engine. James and all the other engines gave him a tremendous welcome. Even Gordon let out a cheer. Edward was very happy that he would never be called Old Iron again.